Okay, Jen, the meeting is started and is recording.
We just want to give a big welcome to everyone this morning. First attempt at a hybrid meeting, so want to make sure that we're accommodating everybody's needs and able to have everyone participate the way it works for them. So I am going to turn it over to Commissioner Layden to provide a welcome and get us started this morning.
Commissioner Layden, you are unmuted and may speak.
Layden may be having a little bit of trouble. If you
Jen, I just heard your voice for the first time. I don't know if it's.
Can you hear us?
This is Abe. I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that. If you would like to kick us off with a welcome, we're just getting started.
Well, wonderful. Yes, welcome everyone to the Executive Committee of the Douglas County Homeless Initiative. On behalf of Douglas County, I just want to thank each and every one of you, both virtually and online, as well as in person, for joining us today and engaging in the conversation. No doubt, people experiencing homelessness and the issues associated with that particular dynamic has been top of mind for many individuals throughout the Front Range, certainly now in Douglas County, as we're starting to take more of a laser focus in terms of options, possibilities, and perspectives in terms of how we address this particular issue in our area. You know, we had a really interesting conversation yesterday in the working group, and I know many will probably share a bit more, but I think one of the themes that I wanted to level set with is this notion that when we talk about homelessness, we want to be people-centered. We want to be people first. That's why we say people experiencing homelessness. And that's why when we talk about the Douglas County Homeless Initiative, it begins with initiative. It doesn't begin with homeless. So we're really thankful for the opportunity to engage. I know much will be said about the recent tour to the Colorado Springs Rescue Mission and the amazing Jack Briggs. I had an amazing and very inspiring experience. I'm humbled and very grateful to have been included in that. But I'm excited to talk more today and hear more about what everyone is focusing on for going forward. Thank you, Jen.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. So just to go ahead and get us started, I do have some meeting logistics that I just wanted to work through with everybody. We are definitely planning to have monthly meetings for the executive committee. We have those meetings set up at 8:30 on the second Thursday of the month. So this will be a regular monthly time for us. We do plan to continue to do this as a hybrid meeting so that we can accommodate in person and virtual. The locations may shift depending on the availability of this room, but will likely be either located here in the Miller Building in A and B where we are currently, or at the Human Services Conference Room. As IT got us ready this morning, they let us know that both of those conference rooms have been improved for virtual hybrid meetings. So hopefully you all can let us know through feedback, you know, how that is working for you and if you were hearing everything well. Just for those who are virtual, and I know that we're all pros at this now, but if you would raise your hand, Luke is our host for this meeting. Luke Thornton is our host. And he is going to help me to know when people are raising their hands so that I can make sure that I acknowledge everyone. I want everyone to have ample opportunity to participate in the meeting today. We are also recording these meetings and plan to record them going forward. And also wanted to let you know that you should have received an email notification for this meeting that included an agenda before the meeting. And you will receive also an automatic email afterwards that includes the meeting notes for it. So wanted to let you know that as well. Do plan for this meeting and going forward to have a public component at the end of the meeting. We'll have some time at the end of the agenda for those who are joining us from the public if they would like to provide input or additional information for us. And with that, I will try to ask if anybody has questions at the end of kind of each agenda item. So I'll just check in and see if anybody has questions on any of that. Do you see any hands?
No hands raised at this time, Jen.
Thank you. Okay, then we will move on to the second piece of our agenda, which is the Douglas County Homeless Initiative website. In order to maintain communication, both for those in the public and the community, and those of you all who are participating in the homeless initiative as our representatives, we wanted to make sure that we had information available. So we have been working with our public affairs team to put together a Douglas County Homeless Initiative website. And we are still in process of finalizing that at this point, but I did want to let you know that we plan to have a landing page that has some information that kind of focuses on the why of the reason why we are engaging in this effort, and kind of just demonstrate the heart of that. So we will have a landing page that talks about that. And then at this point, we are planning to have a secondary page that kind of lays out how we are implementing the homeless initiative. And that will include information about the work group that we have of subject matter experts. And really that information will be at a pretty high level. You know, we have community partners participating with us. We have nonprofit partners, you know, just what types of people are helping with that, law enforcement representatives. And then we also plan to have information about the executive committee. And one of the things we've talked about related to that is having a list of representatives who are working with us on the executive committee. And our thought was to do that by organization. So just wanted to let everybody know about that. And as soon as we have that finalized for you all, we will be sending a link so that you can see that. Any questions on that? Or I see that Wendy Holmes is on. Wendy, did you want to add anything on that? Luke, I'm not sure if you would need to unmute her. I need to give her the opportunity to speak.
Go ahead, Wendy. You are unmuted.
Wendy, this is Troy. You may need to do a *6 on your phone.
Fun things. And she may be just listening in. So I will, Wendy, if you want to add something at another point later in the meeting, just feel free to raise your hand. If there aren't any other hands raised, Luke, do you want to let me know?
No hands raised.
We'll move on to the next piece of our agenda.
I'm wondering, before we move to the next piece of the agenda, I wonder if Luke, if you wouldn't mind facilitating doing a introduction. There are people here who weren't here last time, and I think it'd be good for everyone to know who's all here. So calling off the roll from your spot, and then we can do the introductions.
Yes, I'm hearing that you'd like to know who is online, so you know who's with us. Is that correct?
Yes, we could have them introduce themselves if you just want to point to who your screen.
Okay, I will go through one by one. Let's start with you, Kevin, since you popped on.
All right, yeah, Kevin Rance here, City Council member with the City of Castle Pines.
Next, Amber, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Sure. Amber DeBerry with Douglas County Libraries. I'm the Director of Community Engagement.
Brooke?
Hi, my name is Brooke Jankowski Hopkins. I am the Director of Patient Access for the Behavioral Health Service Line for UC Health.
Karen Johnson?
Hi, Town Council member, Town of Castle Rock.
Diane Leasley?
Diane Leavesley, Director of the Douglas County Housing Partnership, the housing authority for the county and towns in Douglas County.
Aaron White?
Good morning, Erin White with Mana Resource Center and Winter Shelter Network.
Jamie Reif?
Good morning, Jamie Wright for the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative. I'm the Director of Communications and Development.
Jay Carpenter?
Good morning, Jay Carpenter, City of Lone Tree, City Council.
Jen Bach?
Good morning, Jen Bach, Chief Clinical Officer at All Health Network.
John Kellner?
Morning, everyone. John Kellner, District Attorney for the 18th Judicial District that covers Arapah, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties.
Kristen Reed?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kristen Reed. I'm the Assistant Town Manager for Castle Rock.
And Seth Hoffman?
Hi, everyone. I'm Seth Hoffman. I'm the City Manager for the City of Lone Tree.
And Lance, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Lance Ingalls, Douglas County Attorney.
And one more, Aaron Johnson.
Erin Johnson, Douglas County Human Services, Self-Sufficiency Division Manager.
That's everyone. So we will start in the room. I'm Jennifer Evie. I am the Assistant Director of Community Services for Douglas County.
Good morning, everyone. My name is
Gabe Layden, County Commissioner.
Good morning, everyone. Ruby Richards, Douglas County Human Services. Melissa Ingalls, Douglas County Department of Human Services. I manage the Family Support Division.
Dodgel Grants Coordinator for Douglas County. Morning, Rand Clark, Community Services Manager, Douglas County.
Morning, Helen Kuros from Oyo Hotel.
Tim Dietz, Castle Rock Town Council.
Dan Marlowe, I'm the for Help and Hope Center.
Rick, I'm the Deputy County Manager for I apologize. I had it in my mind we were meeting at Human Services, so
maybe next time.
Let's go over from there.
Adams, I'm with Human Services as well. I'm the Child Protection and Adult Protection Intake Program.
Jennifer Osorio, I'm with Human Services.
Shelley Taylor, Human Services. I'm a Technology Projects Manager.
I'm Monica Luth, a 31-year resident of Douglas County also.
Thank you. So happy to have everyone on board with us this morning, and happy to know who is here with us. Wendy, I see that you've joined us.
Yes, WebEx doesn't do quite well on a phone, so
Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day. Wendy Holmes, Director of Communications and Public Affairs for Douglas County. It's a pleasure to be working on this initiative. Thank you.
Good morning. So Wendy, was there anything else that you wanted to add as far as the website for the homeless initiative before we move on to the next item? I wanted to give you an opportunity if there was something you wanted to add.
No, I think I just wanted to affirm with everyone that our website is on a WordPress platform. Google favors it because it is a very responsive design and is effective on all platforms and all devices. So when we have another opportunity, Jennifer, thank you, to talk about communications. I know that a lot of us have an interest in this. This webpage will be the baseline for our narrative, the baseline for how people receive information. And we look forward to working with all of you to ensure that the narrative we want in our community is present there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Move us along to the next item on our agenda, which is the Springs Rescue Mission Tour. So want to set this up a little bit for us. I think that as we're exploring the different opportunities that this initiative can look at addressing for the people of Douglas County, what we also wanted to do was make sure that we learned from our neighbors and we understand how others are tackling this situation. So the Springs Rescue Mission is located in Colorado Springs. So, you know, certainly a large area with a high population of homeless. So something that they, I think, have been grappling with for some time now. The Springs Rescue Mission has been in operation for 25 years. And it is, you know, I must say, it is quite awe-inspiring to see. It is a full homeless resource campus that is available there, but it didn't start out that way. And I think that that's something for us to learn from as well. What I heard from them is they started out by, you know, a couple who was interested in providing some help for people who were experiencing homelessness. And they started just by serving sandwiches. And they did a really good job with that. And I think that their connection with people made a big difference. And they went from there to kind of building out into the campus that they have today. I heard somebody said yesterday it was a 17-acre campus. It is quite large. It is quite impressive. And it certainly offers a robust offering of not only wraparound services, but different levels, I would say, of shelter. And they call that their pathway. So the reason for us, you know, to set up this tour, and, you know, we understand that we couldn't have, you know, everyone join us for that tour, but we did try to focus on having each of the jurisdictions represented, and allowing our law enforcement officers to join us with that as well. And part of the reason for that was they take, and I think we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but they take a very collaborative approach with their law enforcement in Colorado Springs to try and have a synergistic, I would say, approach for helping those who are in a position of homelessness and really they do encourage as much as possible to utilizing the Springs Rescue Mission as a resource. Springs Rescue Mission really has set themselves up as a pathway. It is an opportunity for people to come in at whatever level I think they need assistance. So they have everything from a day shelter transitional shelter, more permanent shelter. They have a full spectrum of shelter services, but they also have a lot as far as the different community services they offer. So they have, I would say, kind of a triangle of support is how they describe it. Focus on housing through the shelter, but they also focus on health, making sure that people's health is taken care of, and employment. Their goal is to get people to self-reliance. So it was a very interesting tour. I think that there was a lot there that we could learn. And it did not, like I said, did not happen overnight. This is something that they, I think, just really within the last couple of years have built out. They had an $18 million capital campaign to build that out. A lot of that, you know, and I think a lot of us think, okay, how did you do that? But a lot of that, they told us, was largely raised through donations. They did have some grant support for that as well, but a lot of that support came from donations. So they also have, and I thought that this was interesting. They do have a 450 beds available through all the different shelter, different kind of components of shelter. But they also have the capacity to expand. So they have buildings that they can put additional bed space in for shelter expansion if needed. So that was kind of an interesting piece because I think as we're going to hear more about the enforcement aspect of it, those things seem to be very tied together. If you have the availability of beds, you have the availability to do things like camping bans, which Colorado Springs does have in place. So I want to leave plenty of time to have those who joined us on the tour be able to provide their observations. I think that we all had a lot of things that we took away from that. And just to reiterate, you know, we are just at the beginning of learning, you know, what those different options look like out there. But this was our direct neighbor to the south, seemed like a very good opportunity to learn from them and benefit from the 25 years that they've been doing this. So Commissioner Layden, do you want to start us off?
Well, yes, and I want to thank everyone that took the time to go down to the Springs and see that in person. If I had one word to encapsulate what I felt leaving there, it was inspired. I think you heard me say that earlier. What Jack Riggs and his team have done in this particular field is nothing short of remarkable. They really do have a people-centered perspective. I was taken aback by getting to meet a gentleman named Matt, who had made it through the addiction and mental health recovery program and is now running their catering division. And so we got to tour the culinary space within the Colorado Springs Rescue Mission. And when you walk in, I mean, it is clean, efficient. They're catering, I think, up to like $500,000 a year. It's like an actual catering business. And now Matt is employing other people that have graduated from the program and that have made it through. So what's interesting is literally being able to walk through the front doors and see people that are potentially addicted, struggling. They're not ready for jobs. And I really love the model that Jack has, which is that's okay. You can come addicted. You can come with mental health issues. We will take you, we will house you, we will shelter you. Those people, according to him, are really not ready for employment right away, immediate care. One of the cool things is that In-N-Out Burger actually shows up, I want to say, did they say once a week or is it twice a week? Once a week, and everyone that's there at the shelter gets to have some free hamburgers. I mean, for me, I've eaten at some really nice restaurants before. In-N-Out is kind of like rank number one for me. So I'm like a 3 Michelin restaurant, In-N-Out, they're tied for number one for me. So I may go back, but you know, he did mention something sort of sad, which is that a lot of people experiencing homelessness that first come through those doors and get to eat will gain about 20 to 30 pounds just in that first month or two because they are so absolutely hungry and in need of some help and hope, as I see our colleague over here. So being able to walk through in person and see the different transitions from entry level, I just need food and shelter, to maybe developing some skills and doing what Jack called more of a transactional approach. That really has stood out to me in this learning and listening mode that we're all in, which is things on the street are very transactional. And I know our professionals in human services hear about this probably all the time and are very adept at it, but people are trading sex, drugs, really bad things for food and shelter. At this facility, you have to leave at 7 in the morning. But if you get a mental health check, you can stay for an oatmeal breakfast. If you get a health check, you can get a red locker for a week. And so what he reminded us of is when you just hand somebody a blanket or hand cash out of a window, there's this sense that you're not worthy. I'm just going to give you something. You don't have any worth to give something back into society. And so at the shelter, they are providing their willingness to get a mental health check in exchange for that hot meal. And so they're giving their time and so he talked about one gentleman that now cleans the floors. And if a new person comes in and throws a cigarette butt on the ground, that guy's like, don't do that. I just spent, all day cleaning this. So there's worth, there's ownership, there's the dignity of their human experience. They're not homeless people. They're people that have experienced homelessness. I really love that, again, that people-centered approach. I will say that one also dynamic comment that was made, not from Jack, but one of his staff members, is that you end up in 3 places. You're either going to end up in jail or in a ER or in a shelter. So you got to pick one. I am convinced that, and I know our wonderful DA and many members of law enforcement are online and may agree, the impact to our criminal justice system when you just criminalize homelessness is really significant. And we don't want people that are in that challenge space to just be criminalized. The other issue is our hospitals can't necessarily deal with all of the mental health issues and addiction issues that occur when someone is just dropped off at an ER. So can a shelter that has this sort of transactional dignity of worth component be part of that third C that we've been talking about, that community services piece? I was really encouraged. I hope Jack gets a chance to come in. Jen and Dan and our staff have been so phenomenal. I'm very thankful for them, but I believe you have him coordinated to come in and chat with us. So I'm just excited for him to share firsthand his expertise.
Yes, I think that will be very exciting for you all to hear. He's a very dynamic individual, is certainly an advocate. He's been impacted by the issue of homelessness through his life. So it is very inspiring to hear from him. We definitely want to make sure everybody has the chance to hear from him. So we will be scheduling that.
Jen, before I forget, I mentioned yesterday, but 2 really cool things. They allow pets. So they talk about, one thing that gets ignored all the time are animals, and then teeth and toes. So when you come in, if you have a pet, there's actually a place for pets to be taken in and cared for. There's a little kennel, incredibly clean. I couldn't believe how well cared for. But if you come in with an animal, you're not going to be turned away. You can get care for that animal as well. And then there are some volunteer dentists that actually provide mobile dental services. So while we were there, there was the mobile unit where people could get their teeth worked on for free. And that was a contribution that dentists in the community had made. So really a cool, I'm hoping more can come down and maybe take a peek at some point. So
absolutely, we will try and set up additional tours for everyone. They were very open to that. So it will be many, I would expect. So I want to give everyone who attended a chance to provide their feedback and input. I know Councilman Dietz, you attended as well. Did you have some insights?
Yeah, same sentiments as Commissioner Layden here is humanity. And, the fact that he's a 2-star general in the Air Force doesn't hurt. I like that approach. Tough love. I think that if any of you have your own children, you can look this way. They're not children, they're adults, but you have to go through that same cycle again.
Member, yes. Yeah, the fact that there's a program to take them from the street to an initial entry point to then they get to pay rent within the facility and get a job. So Jack talked about the fact that 30% of individuals that come through there are now able to reintegrate back into society, getting their own house, getting low-income apartment services. And the fact that many people that actually start off the misconceptions about homelessness, it's very difficult for them to just go into living into a house or an apartment. This transition step. And I was so impressed by the amount of services that come to this nonprofit organization in a one big room to provide them services and then the job training opportunities too. So as we look at homelessness going forward, it's just not about feeding people. It's about providing a pathway to their success back into society as a working, productive member of society that has skills and wants to learn and grow. So there is a good percentage of people there that want to come back into society and have had hard times fall on them. So here in Douglas County, this is something we have to look to long term as this issue and our population grows. You just saw in the Parker Chronicle or Douglas County newspapers, our population has grown 25% in Douglas County since 2010. So this will be an issue that we have to address going forward. And I'm so excited that Commissioner Layden has chaired this committee and has taken up this cause and gotten this group together.
Well, thank you for that, Laura. Let me just say that I'm just a participant with you, somebody that is deeply interested. And what I love about our elected officials in Douglas County is you don't wait to do great. And Tim, Laura, Jay, many elected officials, we all know each other very well, and we're ready to move quickly on things that are important to us. And your communities are important to me. So when I see Parker, when I see Castle Rock, particularly with criminal reintegration in the Justice Center, right here in Castle Rock, that is a big part of our conversation. But we love for it to be informed by experts, by our partners in the faith-based community and human services in the nonprofit realm, and absolutely in law enforcement. It's really fun for me as an elected official to hear and gather information from those that know far more than I do. So I just appreciate you guys being here and for your municipalities engaging. So thank you.
Absolutely. I know that Kristen from Castle Rock, Kristen Reed, was on the tour with us on Friday. Kristen, do you want to share some of your thoughts?
Sure, I'll share a couple of things, Jennifer. I think one thing that struck me was the funding structure for the Springs Rescue Mission. They're over 90% supported by foundations and individual donors, and I thought that was quite remarkable. They have a staff of 97, and so to be able to realize that level of support, I thought was quite impressive. And then one other thing that impressed me was their ability to compensate for the barriers that would prohibit people from entering their care. One huge barrier are pets, and they have a really interesting way of accommodating folks with their pets. They also have accommodations for all of the goods that the folks in the individuals experiencing homelessness have with them. And so it was interesting to see how they had thought of all the potential barriers to people wanting to access their services and found ways to address those.
Thanks, Kristen. That actually brings up another thought for me as well, and I think we can kind of talk about this a little bit more. But one of the other barriers that people express about going to shelter is the notion that it's not safe there. It's not a safe place to be, and I think that what we saw with the Springs Rescue Mission is that they have taken a lot of steps to be able to ensure for those that come in and utilize those services that they do feel safe when they come. They have a completely secure campus, and they do have one entrance that people come in, and they are, you know, through a security check when they come in, and they're also provided with they go through a quick assessment. They're provided with a photo ID, and that is kind of their passport to come in from that forward. So I think from the very beginning, they start with that sense of worth, I think, and, you know, belonging. So I thought that was just really something that resonated well with me, because I'm sure I can just imagine how scary that situation can be and how much better you would feel to come into a very safe environment like that. And you know, kind of along those lines, I spoke a little bit before about the kind of synergy that happens between law enforcement and the Springs Rescue Mission. Rand, do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Because I know on the Monday or
So the Friday group, we were actually very fortunate. Colorado Springs has a homeless outreach team in their law enforcement, and we had 3 members of their hot team come on their day off to join us on Friday. It was really beneficial. We had Sergeant Torrance from Castle Rock Police Department and Captain Weekly from the Sheriff's Office, both in attendance. So to have some law enforcement perspective, both from our side and from their side, was really valuable. And I think a couple of my takeaways were really one of their officers said it well. They said a few years ago we did a lot of homeless outreach, and we were kind of social workers in uniform, in cock uniform, and we tried as best we could to help people and to, you know, address issues. But he said really since the shelter really expanded a few years ago, he said we've been able to turn much more now into a homeless enforcement team, because we have an intervention. We can come and we can connect with somebody who's sleeping on the streets and say, you can't stay here. And when they say, well, I want to go to, there's no place for me to go. We have a shelter. It's open. There are beds. And they pull up an app on their phone that says how many beds are available. Well, there's no place for my dogs. Well, they have a place for your dogs. There's no place for my stuff. They have a place for your stuff. And they now have an option for them. And now the law in terms of code enforcement, they tell us, is now on their side, because now they can enforce the various regulations, the various ordinances they have around camping. And it really ties that together. The services tied with the ability to enforce. And so that really, really stuck out to me. I know Sergeant Torrance and Captain Wheatley took a whole lot of notes. They've already passed on some of their standard operating procedures to us, and some documents for us to review. So that was really evident, that the partnership that law enforcement had with the shelter, and how they really work together. And then if I could, Jen, while I have the opportunity to share, the other thing that Jack said, and yes, he is a general, and you can tell he runs a very tight ship, or tight airbase or runway or something like that. Air Force general. But he said, you know, he uses this analogy. There's just enough grease in the gears to allow people the opportunity to move forward, right? They provide them that opportunity. But there's just enough sand and grit in the gears to make it uncomfortable, because they don't want this to be their forever home. They don't want this to be the place this is not your long-term solution. This is an opportunity now for you to get to self-reliance. So that tension between the grease in the gears and the sand in the gears was really, really, really evident, and something that I really took away from that. And I thought they did a really good job. You know, their goal at the end of the day, when the officers are out working with somebody in on the streets. Their goal is not to throw them in jail. Their goal is not to, unless they're committing a crime, right? So obviously if they're committing a crime, that's a different, but their real goal is to ultimately use the tools they have to help them get to shelter where they can then receive the services and get the opportunity through that program to get their life back on track. And that was really evident and very clear that that was their goal. Their goal was to use the tools, to use code enforcement, not to punish, but as incentive to get help, right? As an incentive to get back on track. And so I think that was made very clear. And we were very fortunate to have the members of Colorado Springs Police Department with us on Friday. I wish they could have been there on Monday, but they were working. They came on their day off and gave it their own time. So that was very, you could see the benefit the police department saw in this relationship and partnership. That 3 staff would come on their days off to come and share was rather impressive. So.
I just wanted to touch briefly on law enforcement and our perspective in Douglas County around law enforcement. And I'm really pleased to hear from really everybody here, really those in the working group, that we really value those that are in law enforcement. Law enforcement officers are our partners. We see them as compassionate members of our community, and 99.99% of them are out there to do the right thing and look out for our citizens. So I hope that's a perspective that many share. Certainly when you hear things about defunding the police, we're probably the opposite of defund the police in Douglas County. We fund law enforcement. And I think part of that, Randy, you touch on it really well, which is nobody wants to criminalize homelessness. The mental health initiative in Douglas County, and I see Barbara Drake, we might have a few others from the mental health initiative here and online. They've had such success with the co-responder program in Douglas County, where you have a peace officer paired with a clinician that goes out to a 911 call, and instead of arresting somebody with a mental health issue, they get diverted to care. And in many ways, I had the opportunity to have a nice conversation with former DA George Brockler, both on a his role as a district attorney, and then also on a personal level. And his question to me was, Abe, when I go to an intersection and I see somebody experiencing homelessness, I'm conflicted because I want to help them, but I don't want to add to the problem. What do I do? And so part of the comments and learning that I think we've all had is, well, yeah, let's not criminalize homelessness, but let's make sure that law enforcement is part of the process and informing it. And so this emerging thought around a co-responder program for homelessness is really kind of exciting, where maybe you have a peace officer paired with a human services professional that knows exactly how to direct that person to services, but nobody gets arrested. Nobody gets thrown in jail. You have the code enforcement, that second C. You have camping bans. You don't want to see 2-year-olds in medians. You want to make sure the public is safe. So that's on the books. But maybe when a citizen calls a dedicated number for a co-responder team made up of that peace officer and that human services professional, that individual can be directed to care, can be directed to community services in a place like the Springs Rescue Mission, where that path to self-reliance can be gained. So I just wanted to emphasize our deep appreciation for law enforcement in Douglas County, and we're thankful they're at the table.
Absolutely. Any other comments related to saw, heard, have shared regarding the Springs Rescue Mission? Barbara, you were also on there.
Sure. I appreciated the opportunity to. I hadn't been there for many years. I actually lived down there in Colorado Springs. But one of the things I took away is this idea of you have to have a philosophy about how to address homelessness in your. So I would urge this group to, deal around a shared philosophy about, kinds of strategies you then to accomplish that philosophy, or I always call it a framework. And we had some success with the mental health initiative, sort of approaching it in that way. That's one of the takeaways that I had, was their philosophy, their faith-based organization. I think, as was mentioned, I was very impressed with the fact that most of their funding comes from the private sector. It's impressive to me. I think just like we did with the co-responder program, we visited Colorado Springs and we took away the best parts of what we thought they were doing, but really customized it to our Douglas County demographics and our Douglas County issues, and we just need to do the same here. I also think he talks about meeting people where they are, and so you have to understand that homeless people are not like all the same, so to speak. That some have a job and come in, they just have lost their place to live. They might go right to the highest level of shelter just to have a safe place to live, so they can go to their job and take a shower and eat before they go. And then they have other people on the streets for many might be mentally addicted. There women that have been victimized by domestic violence and have tried to escape that by streets. So I think that was another takeaway, was you have to get to know the stories of homeless people and understand what are the right services, what are the right connections that they need. Do they have family that can support them? All that, and not sort of a one-size-fits-all approach, but by their name, but also by their story.
Since we have you, and I'm gonna consider you the expert on the co-responder teams. Any parallels from what you see happening with our CRT teams through the health initiative and what we could be?
Well, I think first of all, the CRT teams are encountering homeless people also, in addition to other folks out there. And I think we just need to think about how we sort of build that capacity. For me, it's all about linking all the resources together and not kind of doing things in silos. In other words, so how do we utilize resources that we've developed through human services, through community development, to address this issue? And we also know we have the jail reintegration program. What elements can we add to that so that when people are being released from jail, and Commissioner Layden and I talked about this earlier this week, not wait until they're released and they're walking down the street in front of human services, but figure out what we can do as part of the release program to either get them back to where they have maybe family supports or get them connected with resources before they're ever released and walking down the street, trying to panhandle or stopping in at dance shops. So to me, I think there's a lot of possibility with a community response team model, but I think we build on, what we've been able to do about what's the approach with homelessness. We also are trying to connect with Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners that dispatches mobile crisis for behavioral health, and actually Signal Behavioral Health is part of our initiative that oversees that program. So we're trying to figure out, when does it make sense for just behavioral health people to go out versus the co-responder program that includes law enforcement. So, my thought is, how do we figure out how to use what we already have developed and then build on that to address homeless population as it exists and as we see it in.
I completely agree with you on that. One of the things that was very striking to me was the number of partners, the number of community partners that are not necessarily located right there on their campus, but do provide services to them there. I think it was like more than 50 community partners that they work with. I think that we absolutely have similar opportunities to be able to build that collaboration of services. I think it's something that, we have with our nonprofit partners now and could continue to build upon. I think that as much coordination as we can have and collaboration around these kind of key services that are going to be needed for this population, I think that is really an opportunity for this group to look at. So something to really consider, because you know, we see that a lot in Douglas County. We have developed nonprofits that are doing amazing work, have put together a variety of resources and services available, and really do an amazing job of working together, collaborating. So just building upon that, have that foundation and structure to build upon. So I think that is something I'm very excited about.
Jen, there's one other thing I would just add, and we heard this from Jack at CCI first, and I think this is an important distinction, that their program is not based on housing first. The program is based on this kind of transactional nature, as Commissioner Layton is talking about, that you meet somebody where they are, but then you begin to build this strategy with them about what's the first step to move beyond the situation you're in. And what are we going to do? What are you going to do to do that? That's a different kind of approach. It's a different philosophy than some other homeless initiatives have. And, you know, they have right next to their campus, they have a housing unit that was built with this kind of housing first money from the federal government. And they're not big fans of that. Even if you manage it, they are not big fans of it. And they said, this is very direct to say, you give somebody a place to live who's addicted to meth, all they have is a place that's private behind closed doors to be smoking meth, or, you know, getting drunk every day and never leaving this place that you've provided to them. And so I do think that, you know, my takeaway was about, you have to have a philosophy about how you want to work with homeless people in your. And so I think that's an important. That was to me a profound distinction between what they were doing and there are other homeless programs in the country the same, versus sort of a housing first approach. You know, there's money behind, there's funding behind, but you know, you have to make a decision about what you want your philosophy to be, so to speak. So I thought that was kind of a important distinction that we saw in that program.
I'd touch on, I think that is such an important point, and I would love to hear more from others in this group and maybe people online about that perspective. Because Jack was very clear about the housing first model. You know, as we listened to him, it was sort of, you know, you don't want to throw a homeless person in jail, but you don't want to throw a house to a heroin addict either. And he said, you know, if you're just handing resources out to somebody that's addicted, you're probably giving them just enough money to OD and to end up dead. So I really do, and I want to compliment and acknowledge those that I believe they're well-intentioned, that believe in housing first, but no doubt, I think we want to take a very different approach here that is focused on that personhood and that transactional nature, where if you want resources, we will meet you where you're at. But we don't want to become victims of our own compassion and encourage dependency and allow people to die in a facility that we provide them.
In addition to that, how do we teach our local communities that actual thing is, because there are so many people out there that wear their heart on their sleeve. Appreciate it. But when you really get into that, it's just like a teenager that wants $20 and doesn't use it correctly. Or you guys, if you have kids, you understand that it's the same principle as teach them to fish, basically. So I'm sitting here thinking, what could be some long-term goals, short-term goals? How can we get this basic, simple adages out to our community? Like, hey, when we see those people on the corner, Jack always breaks down there and said, you know, what's your name? Okay, have a nice day. Don't give them $20 every day. I'm looking for those guys drive by and I'm not giving money. What's your name? How you doing today? I need $20. Well, walk over to McDonald's and I'll buy you some lunch. You know, take care of their needs that way instead of giving them something. But you know, it's a process. But I think there's something that for the town of Castle Rock, you know, the fact is that there are more people incarcerated, and they do come out right here in Castle Rock. And I've been driving around town between appointments and this and that. I see people sitting around our Veterans Memorial now with homeless and stuff. I'm seeing it. Guys are driven by them. I run the path along the creek now, and you see that. I get a lot of complaints about that. My email, I'm sure some of you folks, other people can do. So it's really I would like to see a program where we really get that short-term message out to the community. Like, here's a couple things that have proven in the Springs, maybe in Denver Rescue Mission, what works.
So Tim, I know that the fourth C that we've been talking about is communications.
Yeah.
And it's not only communicating to our citizens, but those that are experiencing homelessness as well.
Yep.
And no doubt, if people in Douglas County that have never experienced a person that is struggling, they hand $100 out of a Mercedes or whatever. But I mean, I think, we're the wealthiest county outside of Washington, D.C. So there's a lot of resources here and very compassionate people. We want to encourage our citizens, never hand any cash out of a window. That's not safe for them. It's not safe for the person that's asking for it. Direct them to services, right? But we need to be able to communicate that. Jack made a comment that if you have teenagers, you don't just put them up in their room and say, hey, we'll bring money up there, give you a meal up there, send up an Xbox. And if you ever need anything, come on down to the family room. I've got 2 teenagers. That does not work. You will never see them ever again. So
Next you for the next meal.
they'll send you a text, send up more money, more food. But that law enforcement piece is so important. We're going to get into counts a little bit here. It is not as pervasive in Douglas County as it is in the Springs or in Denver yet. But that's why we're being proactive and jumping on this now. I will tell you, as an elected official, our citizens have a zero tolerance policy. They bought their homes here because they expect it to be clean and safe. And they're not going to have it depreciate because of externalities associated with homelessness and other issues. And that's not, again, not to criminalize homelessness, but there are issues associated with that population where people that don't choose to get resources and don't choose self-sufficiency do litter, do trespass, do vandalize. I'm a 5th generation Coloradan. I was born in Denver, and you can't go down 16th Street Mall without being solicited for money at every single block. And those business owners that have people urinating in their doorsteps and, throwing trash all over the place, it's really tough to run a business when that's happening. And that's a crime. And so I'm really thankful that this community is taking that sort of no tolerance policy. I see our DA up there. I don't know if he has some. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the DA for his thoughts and comments.
Thanks, Abe. I was just actually going to echo some of your concerns with the housing first model. I do have some concerns that, simply providing that upfront without a significant amount of accountability doesn't lead to the sort of skill building that we hope to see, that then might enable folks to no longer experience homelessness. My experience, of course, with this population is solely in the criminal justice realm. So I know there's many other experts here that probably have a lot to talk about and data to share on this front. But my experience with folks that are experiencing homelessness who also intersect with the criminal justice system is that where we see the most success is when there is a level set of accountability, not a requirement that, hey, you will get a job right away or something to that effect that's not tangible and achievable, like a proximal goal for them, but something that helps them along the way, like in our problem solving courts, where we take sort of baby steps on helping to build skills in dealing with things like addiction or post-traumatic stress. And then they get small incentives along the way as they meet those goals, or they get a sanction that potentially takes them back a notch if they fail to meet them. But they're more immediate, like right in front of them, that you can actually get them to grab onto and then hopefully build upon. I think when you put the cart before the horse with the housing first model, you have some unintended consequences. If you look to the West and you look at San Francisco, I know they embrace the housing first model quite a bit. It doesn't seem to have worked out well in that area. Now, it's not the same as Douglas County. Obviously, there's many, many differences, but I share your concerns in adopting that model.
Well, thank you for that, DA. And I see Jamie Reif on as well. And I had the chance to catch up with Jamie. You've done such great work for many years and are certainly an expert. I know when I asked you, I said, well, what can we do? What can we learn in Douglas County? You're like, get the facts, get the facts. So I welcome your input as well. Did you have some thoughts and comments for us?
I did. Good to see everybody today and good to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I wanted to talk a little bit about Housing First and kind of how it's been, I think, misunderstood a bit. So Housing First was something that was created in the 1980s. And it is very much an evidence-based practice for certain populations. I think the challenge has become is that that principle has been applied to everyone, and we need to be really cautious about applying that original, and we call it capital H, capital F, Housing First, versus lowercase h, lowercase f. So what communities find successful is looking at the individual, and we've talked a lot about that today, just like people are very different experiencing homelessness. So you may be having someone escaping domestic violence, and really all they need is housing and housing first to get them there and get them stable. You have other people that may not be appropriate, like you're saying, to just put them in a home and let them be. So it's really about assessing people where they are and then finding the right housing solution or solution to stability for them. And that's going to look different. And we kind of refer to that as lowercase h, lowercase f. But I think what we have found successful is having communities that are housing focused. So I think it's great that the rescue mission, the Springs Rescue Mission, has a 30% housing rate or success self-sufficiency rate. But what happens to the other 70%? And then, like, how do we make sure that Douglas County, when you're looking at this, builds the right solution for the data, as you said, Commissioner Layden, on who's experiencing homelessness and what their needs are. So just again, making sure the resources that you're creating match the needs of those experiencing homelessness, as well as any long-term or housing solutions do as well.
Well, Jamie, thank you for that. And that's really insightful. I think what I hear you saying loud and clear is assessment. And, that assessment is so critical. I get the sense that that was what occurred at the Springs Rescue Mission. They go through, there's security, and then trained professionals that immediately identify where they're at, in the system.
Yeah, and with that, I think it's really important. The other thing is, like, housing first is not housing only. I also want to be clear with that. So once you're putting people in housing, what are the services to make them successful long-term? And be thinking about that as well.
Councilmember? Yes, Laura Hepton, Parker, Town Council. And I just want to reiterate that in this scenario, government is not the solution. It's the governments of Castle Pines and Parker and Lone Tree and Castle Rock and Larkspur and the Highlands Ranch Metro District that come together to give their community contributions to the nonprofits and through the Douglas County Partnership to support these programs. So government is not the solution here. It's supporting the nonprofits in our Douglas County that can support these individuals. And I just wanted everyone to keep that in mind. Government's never the solution. We have a beautiful American system of capitalism and free enterprise. And this Springs Rescue Mission, as this fine lady here, which I don't know her name, Barbara stated, it's a faith-based organization. And they came up with a terrific model to move people forward. So as we sit here, it's how do we as a governmental body from all the elected officials support our community contribution and our Douglas County partnerships to these various nonprofit organizations as we move forward from 2020 to 2025 to 2030. What does that look like, our support?
To reference what Jamie was talking about, I definitely think there's a proper vetting case by case, and you were kind of hinting at that. I just wanted to clarify that. That's it.
I mean, no doubt, I couldn't agree with both of you more, and I'm sure our colleagues online from the municipalities that we don't think government's the solution. And that no doubt we really believe in that self-sufficiency model and being able to partner well out in the community. I think that the mental health initiative in particular is a perfect example of having, I mean, how many partners do you have, Barbara? Partners in the community. I think that's government done well. When we don't say, hey, it's us, we're going to make those decisions. We work out into the community with experts and maybe provide that glue. I want to grow government, just be a resource.
Want to make sure that we've let everybody have a chance to talk. Luke, can you let us know if there are any other participants online?
I do not have any other hands raised at the moment.
I just want to say a few things. As you know, I'm from Oyo Hotel. I rented for 28 years. You know, when we first came out here, we didn't see that much homelessness and we didn't run into the problem. But recently, for the last couple of years, there is a lot of people that come into the motel. A lot of them, you know, just stay. I have a couple people that have been there for several years. They have a job and, you know, they're able to pay for their living. But we have a lot of people that are mentally ill. There's some of them that family don't want to deal with. I have a gentleman that's been staying for years. I mean, at one point I had to call in law enforcement. They weren't able to do anything because he didn't physically hurt me. But, you know, he was just at a rampage. I have another lady that she's been around Douglas County for a couple of years. They did a GoFund for her. She's legally blind. And I feel like I'm not running a business. I'm also trying to help these people out because, I mean, I reached out. I'm not sure who I, you know, called at Human Services. She doesn't cooperate when she calls because she's mentally ill. She's not only blind, but she's mentally ill as well. So it's like, what do I do? You know, she calls the law enforcement because she's not happy. Well, she's not doing anything. They're not going to do anything for her. You know, so it is an issue. You know, we have a lot of, you know, like they put up a restaurant where Village Inn used to be. They closed it down. We had so many homeless people hang around there. And, you know, and it bothers the other customer. They feel unsafe and stuff like that. So I just, you know, I know that you guys are saying that, you know, housing is not first, but I think it is something that needs to be looked at as well. Because I do see it where there's a lot of people are being put up, but it's only like a Band-Aid on the finger. Or, you know, so it's something that, you know, not only housing, you know, not only mental issues, but housing is a big issue as well. Douglas County is very expensive. People are losing their homes. I mean, I bought my house for $300,000. I had it built in '96, and homes around me are going over $1 million. So how do people are able to keep a home, especially if they lose their job? Just, you know, I really think that a housing is an issue as well.
Can I say something? For those of you who don't know Helen, Helen is a friend, and she's a friend of mine, and she's a friend of our community. She doesn't oftentimes comes to our these types of meetings, and I'm very grateful for you coming. But she is a citizen and a business owner in our community who may single-handedly know more about this issue than all of us put together.
Yes, definitely.
Because to be honest with you, if it wasn't for her and the graciousness of her business, we would not have nearly the opportunity to serve folks that we do in our community. So I want to say that publicly because it's truth. And Dan from Help and Hope Center knows exactly what that looks like. Aaron, who's online with Winter Shelter and Mana Resources, knows exactly what that looks like. But when we look to how do we serve folks currently who are homeless, if it wasn't for this lady here, we would not be able to do near what we're able to do. And I want you all to know that, for those of you who don't know Helen. And the stories of what she does, not just to open her business to help folks, but to employ some of them and to give them a hand up is amazing. That the amount of support beyond just a place to stay that she gives her folks. She genuinely cares for the people that I say this letter, they call Oyo their home. Right.
Yes.
They are her family. And so I for those of you who don't know Helen, and I know she said, hi, I'm Helen from the Oyo, but you need to know a little bit of the story, because she is truly one of the heroes on this subject in our community, and that needs to be said. So.
Well, and on behalf of the county, we are incredibly grateful for you and for Rand, our amazing staff that has worked with you for so many years. And that's a perfect example of an individual that we would love to hear more from, because that experience and institutional knowledge you have, I think, will help inform our perspective here.
Right.
I'll tell you, at the commissioner level, we are often talking about American Rescue Plan Act dollars and tangential issues to homelessness, including criminal reintegration, including mental health, behavioral health. When we met with the leadership from Children's Hospital here locally, we said, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you do? Surprisingly, it wasn't COVID related. It was outpatient therapeutic care for young people experiencing mental health crisis. So when you have that, 14-year-old that's suicidal and we know that a lot of the, mental health facilities got closed in the 60s for a variety of reasons. But we're definitely continuing to explore what that might look like to do that humanely and honestly for the future, especially for young people. On the housing front, we've got a lot of service members, veterans, frontline healthcare workers that they can't afford to live in Douglas County.
Right.
And so we are cognizant of that. The reason that we're actually #2 healthiest county in the country, because we got marked down on affordable housing. So there's one community of 20,000 in New Mexico, Los Alamos County, that got #1. So they've got apparently a ton of affordable housing. That doesn't mean that we're going to do it that way, but I think in partnership, to Laura's point, with others, there's a continuum of care on the housing spectrum. It's important to look at. So I hope you'll continue to come to these, because we really appreciate you.
I'll try.
Okay.
Helen, Karen Johnson's giving you a thank you if you want to read that up on. It's Councilmember Johnson there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm very compassionate because, I was born in Poland. This is, this is a great country, and, I made it, thanks to my parents and stuff like that. But, these people are American citizens and they just can't get it together. And I just feel bad for them, like Brent said, I have quite a few people that work for me and live there, because otherwise they would be on the streets. So, but it's, they just can't afford it. I have a gentleman that was really successful, but because of his addiction, he lost everything. He lost his family. Brent helped him out a lot. And he's still there, but he just can't afford getting anything. There's a couple in Colorado, in Frisco and Gosha Springs, that I heard of recently. The county are leasing motels for low income people. That's, that's something that, maybe we should look, I don't know if this is something you guys would be looking at or something like that. But, there's a lot of that going on as well.
I think we'd be making a huge mistake with all your experience not to ask you the same question we asked at Children's Hospital, which is, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you say to this community? What are we missing? Perspective. Say we need to be thinking.
We do need I really think that we do need something, some sort of a shelter for these people, not just, you know, putting them up for a night or two. We do need more, you know, mental assistance as well. Really do. Not sure. You know, I have this lady, Diana, she's been, you know, she was sleeping under the, what I've heard recently. I've known her over the years because I've seen her bouncing around Castle Rock. But she was sleeping under the bridge in Parker. And the way I understand, you know, what I heard is they did a GoFund for her. And the gentleman that did it gave me a credit card to just, you know, pay for her room on a weekly basis. But, you know, she's constantly unhappy. She talks about the motel. And I know she's mentally ill. Other person would be like, well, here's the door, get out. You know what I mean? So I think we, you know, that's another issue.
Well, I don't know if this is the right time. Dan is the expert on this, but we had the opportunity to tour the Goals facility last year. And one of the encouraging pieces of that is the old Xavier Women's School. And not only is it food and shelter for a night, but it's that mental health counseling, addiction counseling, job counseling. I mean, there's sort of that transitional nature to it. I know we received $1 million from the federal government towards that goals project. In my mind, that seems like that third C of community services, but I don't, do we have any more information about goals or anything you can share?
Well, no, well, first of all, Goals is a phenomenal program that's run by Family Tree. It's a nonprofit based out of Wheat Ridge. As Commissioner Layden said, they are the primary nonprofit. They run some different homeless shelter and domestic violence shelters across the Denver area. They were chosen to work with Arapah County Human Services several years ago to start the Goals program. And it is a multi-use campus for families. It does allow for the families to work. It doesn't just allow for families to work 8 to 5 either. They allow for shift work, which makes it a little bit different from some of the models that we've seen. You have people who are working the midnight shift and they're able to come in and out. We were able to join that program. We did apply for some federal earmark dollars through Representative Jason Crow. Unfortunately, those earmarks are stuck in the budget process, as is everything else federally right now. So it has our $1 million to renovate the last dorm that was empty. Is being held up essentially by the federal budget process. So when and if the budget is passed, we have every belief that it will, then we will have $1 million to renovate that last dorm, and then hopefully start accepting families for our portion of it in the fall. We will be using human services dollars, for those of you who don't know, but for case management through the Colorado Works TANF grant, the federal grant. We will be using food assistance and child care assistance, the governmental assistance programs that Human Services offers. But as Commissioner Layden said, it is a one-stop shop for families. Arapahoe County, I believe, is using American Rescue dollars to fund a robust child care center on that campus. It was also one of the other dorms that wasn't utilized, but Arapahoe Douglas Works is a participant there. There is medical assistance, and there also is mental health, a really strong component. As of today, that would be our really, that is what we're pointing towards for community living. I hear what you're saying about housing. You know, I'm called every day. Job that I have in Douglas County over, you need to X, Y, and Z. There's a family who's living homelessly in a parking lot, or they're panhandling on a corner. The issue is same as everybody else. There's nothing for us to point to. We do, Nicole especially, rents hotels for families regularly. We burn the ones out around Human Services because it comes with different issues if you don't have that. I think the wraparound support that we're all talking about. Not everybody wants that wraparound support, but the ones that do really utilize it. We are one of the only places in Castle Rock and in Douglas County that allows for people to hang out. As long as you're not being disruptive, we'll allow you to charge your phone. Sometimes there's people who, when told, they come and sleep in the lobby. And again, if you're not being disruptive, you're going to be able to sit. We do have computers, and we did that on purpose, computer banks for people to search for different things, and we do partner. But we are one of the partners here that are really looking for help in the solutions, because if we had the solution, we would have given it. And I know Nicole and I know Rand, it's not a sustainable model for one person to work with one individual. And that's a lot of what we're doing right now, is that you can point to 4 or 5 different people where it's successful, but that's a lot of staff time amongst the other jobs that they have, because we don't really have anywhere for them to go. So I am extremely excited about this initiative. I'm extremely excited about goals. I would agree this is not can't be a government solved problem, but we do have really, really robust nonprofit partners in this county that just need permission and a little bit of help to get things going. And I do think we will build something that meets the needs for Douglas County.
Nicole, I see you nodding your head. And again, somebody with a ton of experience firsthand. Do you have any insights in terms of where would you like to be able to direct folks? What do you see in your minds?
Listening to you all talk about housing first, I do think that it's a continuum, so it's important for us to really evaluate each individual. There are individuals that to continue their sustainability and keep their job and take care of their children. Obviously, my world is child protection and adult protection, and so that's quite a continuum in itself. Unfortunately, we have a lot of older adults in this community that do experience homelessness and have a lot of really complex needs, and Ellen has been there for so many of them. Not always the most appropriate or safest place, but it's a place for them to be. So I do think that there's a continuum even outside of individuals with families that our older, citizens in this community are really suffering to find appropriate placements, and that includes the availability and affordability of skilled nursing facilities and assisted living facilities and lower income housing for older adults where they can get support. So I would just encourage this group to not forget about, the other end of the spectrum of individuals that might even be 35 and have a brain injury or experiencing chronic mental issues that sometimes don't always fit into our programs and services or some of the other programs and services. So I've really just been seeing kind of built a grave, for lack of a better word, as far as need. Affordability, I think, is pretty significant, and transportation, I know, is something that comes up quite a bit. So yes, I'm definitely seeing it. I have numerous families that we are paying for hotels currently right now that I'm trying to kind of help them get into somewhere that's more permanent, but it takes a lot of work and effort to secure housing, and trying to work full-time apartments and get the approvals and pay for all of the fees. It can be really, really difficult. So just echo what everyone's saying and experiencing for sure.
Just a couple of comments to what I've been hearing and what Nicole said. One, I'm curious if the Colorado Springs Rescue Mission has any legal aid for these folks, because one of the big things that we run into is their credit, their eviction history, all those kinds of things prohibit them from getting into somewhere once they are stable. So that would be something I'd really keep in mind to our community partners for legal representation to help them solve some of those issues from their past. And then it really is resonating with me, this transactional notion. By that, I think it's important that that transaction can be very minimal. So it's whatever that person has the capacity to do at that point in time. Maybe as simple as going to a mental health check that morning, or sweeping out the dining facility after the meal's over. So it may not look grand on the outside what that transaction was, but it's what that person can actually be successful in, and then that gradually grows.
You know, I was going to say, I think Jack mentioned that there is a person on site at the facility that if you've fallen off the map, they'll reconnect you to benefits, Social Security, just get you all of those, you know, the basic things to return to society. You know, for over 20 years, I volunteered with the Justice and Mercy Legal Aid Clinic. So that is integrated with that facility so that you can get services on site. I think that's really important, particularly for females. I mean, Jack talked about, we got to tour the facility that had all of the for women. It was emotional hearing about it, actually, because, you know, a lot of women, their primary provider died. So they just didn't know where to go. Talked about families dropping off their 85-year-old grandmother because they didn't know what to do with her. And so you really, I think, Nicole, you raise a good point too, as do you, which is that continuum of care, recognizing it's complex, and that yes, you have people that are heroin addicted that may choose a lifestyle. You also have females struggling with just providing that next paycheck and don't. So it's really, yeah, I think recognizing that.
You know, I was called last, me and Nicole were both called last, I think it was Thursday. Law enforcement agency was woman, dementia, and her daughter were asking me where they should go, and I wish I knew, right? And come to find out, they had called a couple of days after the eviction. And thankfully, somebody asked them to call me, and I of course didn't ask Nicole to call them back because that's what I do. But Nicole was able to help them, you know, hook in. But that's where we are in this county, right? There isn't enough services for someone to know what to do. And then if you go up your chain of command, they know who to call here or they know who to call there. And again, all of the different stories we're hearing are stories that a lot of, like, Dan hears every day, like someone who hears all of those stories. And so I'm really excited that we're starting on this path to understand what people are seeing. You know, as someone who runs an agency in the second richest county in the nation that is all about human services, I often get asked, are you guys bored? No, we're not bored. There's plenty of people in this community that need services. There's plenty of people in this community that do things that we wish that they wouldn't, and that I think is only going to grow. And I think as a transition point in the agenda, it might be a good time for Rand to talk about what we're going to be doing next.
Yes, and I want to acknowledge that we had one more person online that to provide some input. So I know
2 people, Jen.
2 people. So
Yes, Jen Bach first, please.
Hi, everybody. Jen Bach with All Health Network. So I really appreciate this conversation and the importance of behavioral health being a part of the solution. One of the things that is really present in this conversation and in our experience as the Mental Health Center is the challenge with providing the early intervention and prevention services that often are not reimbursable services, which make it hard for us to provide. However, if we were able to do that and partner as a case manager in the community in spaces like Helen has discussed, or all of the different various places where individuals with that are homeless and struggling show up but are not yet ready to connect, and to be able to partner in that transitional assessment and relational model and then connect them to care could really make a difference. Fortunately, we just applied for some grant money to allow us to add some staff to be able to do this very thing, both in Douglas and Arapahoe County. So fingers crossed, but it would just be a drop in the bucket to even have one case manager who could be called to start to just develop a relationship with someone and try to get them connected more broadly. Lots of other things I probably could say, but that was one on my mind to just add to the conversation.
Thank you for that, Jen. I think all of those drops in the bucket of resources are incredibly critical for us as we move forward. We do have a lot of one-on-one interactions, as we've been hearing from Nicole and Rand. We need more people to be able to do that, so we appreciate that. Aaron?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to add, I think that is the power and the beauty of what we might be able to do in this organization and in this initiative is pull together all of those that are working diligently and hard in their respective areas and be able to synergize ideas and come up with solutions together. I mean, just Jen connecting with Helen, and I think, you know, it's always tough to be on an island, and probably many of you feel stressed and overwhelmed and like you've been working really hard, maybe independently for a while. And I think we have really good partnerships here, but if we can strengthen those partnerships, I think that's probably, to Laura's point, the best thing we can do is convene.
Absolutely. The power of leveraging our community partnerships allow us to be more present within the community and spread out. So, right, if there's limited resources, how can we really work together to serve these folks? And I'm really appreciative that we're thinking about this and looking at this before it becomes even bigger, so that if we can wrap our arms around this now before it continues to grow, there's some real opportunity to stop it from growing. So.
And I know that, thank you for that, Jen. I know we wanted to make sure that Aaron had a chance to talk as well. Aaron White.
Thanks, Jen. I guess I just wanted to share a quick story from a service provider perspective. And I guess it's technically two stories, but I'll make them quick. So we've had a couple of guests who have stayed in our winter shelter network recently that we've connected to other services in the community. And I think this goes to, Jen, the point that you made, and Ruby, you also made about we're oftentimes working one-to-one and our capacity is limited because we connected those individuals to various different service providers, and it took a while. In fact, one of these ladies who was staying in winter shelter was what some of us would call a frequent flyer. She's with us season after season, but then did manage to find employment and managed to pay for herself to stay in a hotel for actually most of the pandemic. But she just couldn't get enough of the resources together to be able to qualify for housing because of her barriers, because of previous evictions, and her credit is poor. So both of these individuals have joined the program that I work closely with, our Mana Connect program, to be able to have a coach walk alongside them for the next year, probably. But for both of these winter shelter guests, what they also had the opportunity to have access to is transitional housing. And we have a few transitional housing units available through various partners in our community. And we collaborate together to be able to find good quality candidates. But both of these individuals have moved into housing and now can access the resources available through our program, through legal resources. Mental health resources were both one of the first things that these ladies were able to take advantage of. And so I think, yes, we need to leverage the resources. We also need to expand the resources because what we have available currently in the community is limited. However, it's amazing to me. We're going to help one of the second individuals is a mom with some kiddos. We're going to help her move in on Monday. This is a new chapter in her life that she is so excited about, and the opportunities for amazing outcomes for this household is huge. And that's what we want to see more of in this community. And I think as we continue this conversation, building upon the hope that this family has and the other family that I mentioned has will be important.
Agree more, Erin. Thank you for sharing those stories. I think the more and more we hear those stories, the more we understand the power of leveraging those resources. Yes, but I think you made an excellent point, Erin, in that we do need to look at what ways can we expand that? What ways can we increase that?
You know, one thing I'm struck by, because Aaron, in the Mana Connect program, if you don't know about it, it's something that you should program. But as families do and individuals do that program, there are some opportunities from some transitional housing. I do want to say to the elected officials here, it's been my experience that when people find out in an apartment complex or a condo complex or in a housing that this is someone who's transitioning from being homeless, that also comes with a lot of scrutiny from neighbors. And I do know that in the 2 units that Aaron has in Highlands Ranch, a summer or 2 ago, we were just inundated with phone calls over knowing that these families were moving in there and what was that going to do. So as we do look for solutions, I do think you guys should know you're likely going to get phone calls when people find out about, because you can't win. It's going to be either do something about it or don't do something about it. And when you are doing something about it, the commissioners then hand it to me to try to figure out what to do. And I think Erin and her and the church, the Cherry Hills Church, did a really nice job of really standing up for a couple of families who were doing what they could in the best way that they could do it. And the outcome was that they had to move, unfortunately, but it wasn't for lack of trying from the providers in the but our community doesn't have a lot of tolerance. Or not everyone has a lot of tolerance. So I would just say that as something, as we walk through this on this journey, you guys are probably going to get it from all sides. So if you're going to try too hard or not try hard.
I think that's a really good point. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Aaron White and Mana Connect and all the faith-based partners and Winter Shelter Network for what you do, because you've been tackling this problem for a very long time with Rand and many staff members. So thank you for that. And we really appreciate your insights. For elected official colleagues, I wonder if they're hearing this as well, but I believe our citizens are wonderful people. They have low tolerance for crime. They have low tolerance for unsafe neighborhoods. But I think they're also very compassionate. So finding a balance between that compassion and desire for public safety, I think, is going to be a big challenge for this group. Yeah, Tim.
Couldn't agree more. I think just there's a lot of times I'll challenge some of these people, like, get your group, I'll meet you down there. Oh, we don't have time. Well, how do you think Abe Layden or Laura gets time? We need community. We get it that some people are, I've said it before, they're fearful, they don't know what to do, or like what Aaron is doing is you got a family that any one of us, depending on where you're at, not everybody has 10, 20 grand in the savings account to help them get through. We all could be a paycheck away from something. We know people that it's that 5% that has the mental health issues or whatever that percentage is, it really needs that help. And I get neighbors around, what are you gonna do about this and that? And some they're more worried about blowing trash from developments. That's a whole nother story. I go, well, I can bring some trash bags and pick it up with you. Well, that's not my job. Well, when do you start to take responsibility for things that aren't your responsibility? You should, as an adult, you have to teach yourself to do that. It's even hard for me some days. But I tell myself, don't gripe, just go get a garbage bag when I walk my dog and pick up trash. It's that kind of mentality. But Aaron doing yeoman's work there, I agree. I've seen that happen where I want to go over there. You're probably black and white like me and tell these people, what's your problem? Help us. Otherwise, zip it. I don't take that lightly. And I appreciate what you're doing there, Helen. I know that you're probably some of them you want to like, yeah, I'm afraid, and some you understand where they're coming from. Our post 1187 veterans group has put up a lot of people in your place temporarily. That's really in a nutshell. I could go on and on.
You know, a lot of like the homeless people, like, you know, they would be camping behind us and, you know, bunch of trash and stuff like that. And you would just go and talk to them, you know. I went a couple times to them and, you know, people don't appreciate that. They try to walk their pets back there. Can you clean up? And most of them, you know, they're like, you know, I appreciate you talking to me like a human being. And they would, you know, they would clean it up and they would, to me, you need some help with something. You know, there's some of them that are, you know, oh, but some of them are, you know, they just feel that you treat him like a human being. That you don't, you know, he's like, I appreciate it. You don't treat me like trash.
So I agree with that, and Tim's comment is so salient. You know, in Douglas County, I don't think any of us believe that it is government's responsibility to provide permanent housing for anyone. Self-sufficiency is important to us. Personal responsibility is important to us, and you know, we don't want to create a culture of socialism and government dependency, where, to Jack's point, you know, when people come in, he says, "This is not your forever home." And the best thing we can do is encourage that dignity of self-reliance, not self-sufficiency. He made the point that none of us are self-sufficient. We all go to Safeway and go to a mechanic. We rely on our community, but self-reliant. There's no check that I can write that will be equivalent to an individual pulling themselves up, getting a job, and getting that regular paycheck. And that's hard. That's not easy for anybody. I will say, right now, economically, we're in an employee's market where if you breathe on a mirror, you can pretty much get a job. And really, in the Great Resignation, our employers are 30% down just getting entry-level workers. So we know that there are substance abuse, mental health, other challenges, other dynamics that make it hard to get employment. But for those able-bodied individuals that truly want it now, the solution isn't government. The solution is partnering with people like 80 Works, organizations like 80 Works, and connecting individuals to gainful employment.
Sometimes just challenging that local citizen and meeting them out there, even though it disrupts my day too, but you don't tell them that. And you tell them this is a lot easier to do, and go get another buddy of yours, but if those people don't want it, don't force it on them. Walk away and just do what you can, but don't force anything on them. And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say there's a lot to say about that energy that can come from that sense of community, and a lot of what you're saying is I hear that to spark that.
There could be one person that does 10,000 more things than I could ever do, that they just don't know that they can do it yet. I did. That's kind of where things come my way. I'm like, okay, I don't want to, and I do it, and I find out, oh, pretty good at this. How you can inspire other people to do it, and they have a better resource or knowledge of people and stuff like that. That's my kind of thing is, how can we get more people involved to do it? It doesn't have to I agree. It should not always just be government. Joe, because I would rather pour my money into the Springs Rescue Mission or some of these other groups. Here's my money. You're doing something good with it. You need the resources, not just, like I said, if we can temporarily help them, like in Helen's situation, what Aaron's doing, happy day. But
Jen's going to kill me because I know you got to get on to the next agenda item, but it's outcomes, right? In Douglas County, the focus is on, we're not just going to pontificate in meetings. We're going to get to impact and outcomes. And what was cool about the rescue mission, they said they started out with 20 people per year achieving that self-sufficiency model. Now they're 20 a month. I mean, it's not an overwhelming number, but that's significant. I think 20 a month over years I think they said 1,300 total homeless that they have counted. So 20 a month over years can really make a significant dent, I would think. So keeping that emphasis on impact, I think, is important.
We are getting close on time. I do really appreciate the very robust conversation that we've had today. And I think that is incredibly important for us to have those kinds of discussions as we are going through this. A lot of things have come up during this discussion that, you know, we can use as takeaways and things that we can build upon to really, I think, make a difference on this topic. We did have some other things. I think we are going to have to we're going to have to keep that pretty short. I do want to give Rand a quick moment to give a quick summary on the work that the work group is doing in connection to the point in time count coming up. A lot of coordination is happening so that we can really get a very solid understanding of what our baseline is right now with this population. And there is a tremendous amount of coordination happening with from all of the different jurisdictions. So Rand?
Yeah, I'll just really go really briefly. So I want to thank everybody for their input on discussion around definition of homelessness. And we'll use this definition to potentially add some additional questions to our survey of folks here in Douglas County. And so we went through this exercise last month. We won't belabor this topic, but want you to know that we've included a lot of things that you talked about and provided feedback to us last month. And we'll make this available through the notes and through Jen. So Jen, I'll share this with you to include your notes. We'll note it that way. So the annual point in time count is an annual count of shelter and unsheltered people experiencing homelessness. It happens across the Denver metro area. We will be focused on Monday, January 24th and the preceding day on the 25th. On the night of the 24th, we'll be conducting a data count through our partners that use our data system for those that are sheltered. That would be those in the hotels, those at Winter Shelter Network, those in our supportive housing units. And then on Monday night, we'll be focusing on the unsheltered that are sleeping in their vehicles, sleeping in public structures. Those would be things like RTD facilities, bathrooms at local parks, those kinds of things. Staying in local hospitals, we've heard from some of our partners based on the emergency room and response right now across the metro area that we're seeing more people being transported to our hospitals as a result of that. So we'll do some there. And then we'll also be working with the sheriffs to identify those that are staying in the county detention facility. And so really appreciate our law enforcement partners who will be especially helpful on this night, reaching out to those through patrol. And then on the 24th, the 25th and 26th, again, great thanks to our law enforcement partners, the sheriff's office, all three municipal police districts, Castle Rock, Parker, and Lone Tree. We'll be focusing on our unsheltered, those that are sleeping in our open spaces along our creeks and river areas, dry bed areas. We'll be putting together law enforcement teams by jurisdiction to go out alongside of volunteers and staff to conduct the support. Those volunteers will come from many of our partners and from our team here at the county. And then we'll also be using our local agency contacts. And our goal is to utilize the information that our law enforcement friends have been gathering to understand where some of the hotspots are, use our knowledge of where folks have been camping to be able to get out there and go meet them where they're at and conduct the survey. My hope is that when we gather next month, that we will be able to share with you some initial data, again, as a way to set a baseline on who's experiencing homelessness on one night. It's just one night. It's a snapshot. And we know it's a transient population, but we'll be able to use that to begin to level set, right? To begin to say, hey, here's where we started in 2021. And maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we can look at the kind of impact we're making and how we're helping to support the needs of that population. So if you have more questions or you want to know how to help, please let me know. We'd be happy to help. And with that, Jen, I will give it back to you. That's the flyby version. Yes.
What about the families and kids that the school district considers homeless?
They're not. We work with our partners in the school district to account for them as best as possible. There are some laws that prohibit us from conducting the count in the same way because the school district serves the student and not the family. We can't get information around the family, and the information about the children are protected because of the nature of them being minors. So we work hard with our school district and with their McKinney-Vento liaison to try and encourage the folks who are experiencing homelessness to meet us at our Strive to Thrive event, because if they come to Strive to Thrive, then we can include them. But typically we face barriers in counting them one for one with the point in time due to legal concerns around the information of the school district serves the minor and that's protected information. So.
Do also work with the school district to collect so part of conversation.
I think their McKinney-Vento rep will be one of the volunteers that's out helping with the survey. Right. So we work as closely as the law allows.
And Superintendent Wise is invited to this meeting. So we will make sure that we have a as part of the executive committee, myself or Commissioner Layden. I do moving on from Rand in the last couple of minutes. Jen and Commissioner Layden and I are debating. As you can see, there's lots of energy around what we do. Philosophy is going to be something that's going to be really important to make this successful. So Commissioner Layden and Jen and myself are likely going to be talking to a facilitator to see if that would be something that would help us get to some good strategies and the guiding principles faster. Knowing that the next meeting that we have is going to be more of a presentation, and then the following meeting we can really start digging into what are our tangible short-term and long-term goals. And again, we've all had good and bad experiences with facilitators. So we're going to maybe interview a few or maybe one and see where we get to, because we need for things to be globally, but we also need them to be specific to Douglas County. That will make this successful or not. We are not Denver. We are not another municipality that meets the needs for what we are doing here. So you may see some information around that in the very near future, but that's the next step, sort of administratively, from the three of us.
Absolutely. And just to wrap us up, because we are nearing the end of our time, we did allow for this to be a public meeting, and we want to certainly allow for public comment. So I will check with Luke, but Holly, did you
I would love to
comments?
I'm supposed to be standing here.
Sure. Yes, please.
I just want to congratulate you all for the collaboration that you are doing in this initiative. As a longtime resident and involvement in the government here, that's kind of what Douglas County is known for, and it's very impressive. And this is an issue that has coming up all the time with people. And I did pass on some pamphlets. I attended a presentation last night by Paul Scuda, STEP Denver, talking about very similar things that you guys saw in Colorado Springs. And I'm sure if you haven't heard from him, he'd be more than glad to come down and tell you his story and what they're doing down there. But it's very similar, requiring accountability, enabling, those kinds of things. But I think from a public standpoint, I hear a lot from the public, and they are worried about, not in my neighborhood, but out of the homeless either. So finding that balance, I wanted to say, I think education of the public is very important. Rapid City has signs all over downtown that say, don't hand out to the homeless, donate to the community services. And I think the public education of also letting people know, Paul talks really in depth about this, is would you rather have them homeless, or would you rather have them with jobs, paying taxes, putting money back into the economy? And I think those are things that resonated with me that might resonate with the rest of the public. So really, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Is there anyone online with their hand raised that would like to provide a public comment?
I have no chats and no hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, Commissioner, any last parting thoughts for us today?
Well, I know I'm the last thing probably standing between you and your next meeting. Just tremendous thanks. Tremendous thanks. This was really good discussion. A lot of good questions being asked, and I think we're learning a lot. So thank you for your active participation. We really appreciate it.
Right, before I let everyone go, I do want to let you know we do have some additional resources that Jennifer will be sending out for us from Springs Rescue Mission. And as Commissioner said, we will be working with Jack Briggs, who's the director and CEO of the Springs Rescue Mission, asking him to come in and do a presentation for us, likely at our next executive committee meeting. And we will have a lot more conversation to come, a lot more to talk about. At our next meeting, we will also make sure that we share the results of the January point in time count. So we'll have some more information about what that looks like in our community. And that is what I have for you.
The last thing, is you guys are all gonna get to know Jennifer Osario very, very well. She'll be the one gonna be sending you lots of emails, scheduling these meetings. If you wouldn't just mind, as we provide the hybrid meetings, we are gonna try to provide some small food. And in order to do that, we just need to know the amount of people that are going to be coming so that we can account for that. So please respond when Jennifer asks. She does her best to send the fewest amount of emails as possible. But she's going to provide a huge resource to this group by staffing.
Some food and coffee on your way out.
I should have said to help yourself during the meeting, but please take some with you. Good day, everybody, and thanks to everyone who joined us online. We appreciate all the participation.
Glad you're here. You're doing more than anything.